you guys familiar with how it's done in Orthodox Jewish communities?
I think they bite it off, don't they?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, for real?
Yeah. That's a thing. I've actually seen pictures of it, not detailed pictures, but yeah, this is something that is somewhat common in Israel. I think they do it in New York too, at certain places. That you have to pull that out.
Doing it wrong. I'm wrong.
I've been doing it with this. The priest will put his mouth on it, and then there have been kids, babies who have had herpes transmitted that way. It's a big problem.
Several infants have contracted herpes that way, and this is in the United States. I don't even think we're talking Israel here, because I've read this happening in New York. But so yeah, I'm definitely I'm already against it in general, but I feel like that is there you go. Damien, can you pronounce what that that procedure is? One more time.
Metzitza b'peh.
Okay.
Is my the way I pronounce it.
Congratulations on being able to say that. Yeah, so it is, but it's not always done that way. Again, this is a subset of a demographic that does it that way. People have different feelings about it. I'm against it in general, but I read a stat that 1 in 3 men in the world are circumcised. So about 30% of men worldwide are circumcised. But in the United States, over 50% of newborns are circumcised, and as Sonny was saying, in the previous generation, it was like nearly universal. So it's between 70 and 80% of Americans over the age of 40 would be circumcised. So why do you guys think that disparity exists? Like, why is it such a huge gap between the United States and all the European countries, South America, Australia? No one else really does it outside of, for non-religious reasons anyway.
Because America's stupid.
Yeah, Americans, I mean, look at us. We're weird in so many different ways. We think in weird ways.
So before I get flamed for this, I do love the United States. I served this country for 21 years in the United States Air Force, right? Hoorah. No, but true patriotism is appreciating your country for the positive things it has and being willing to criticize it for the negative things that it has. And I think this is something where we are just we've fallen behind. We don't have socialized healthcare in this country, whereas most of the other places I mentioned do. There is a fee associated with getting your child circumcised, whether you realize it or not. You are charged for that. It's not covered by insurance everywhere. Doctors get paid for doing it. So there is some incentive for keeping this around, at least in this country.
I got two. I got 2 medical bills. I fucking know.
I was gonna say, I think Americans are like stuck, or a lot of Americans are kind of stuck in this fucking Leave It to Beaver, Partridge Family universe that they want America to be, because they view like the 1950s, 40s, 50s, all that shit as like, the iconic time of America. And
the good old days.
Right. And I know for sure, all the racism and all that great shit. So because everybody's holding on so tight to this ideal, this fucking picket white fence, whatever, that whole thing, they're stuck in traditions that don't make sense anymore, like the circumcision shit. Super beneficial, actually, during World War II, that a bunch of Americans were circumcised because, the Jewish people were able to come here and seek asylum and not get found out. Because how can you tell when everybody's circumcised? But I don't know why it really started in America. Probably some of those like really Quaker days and shit.
I can answer that. But first, to piggyback off of what you just said, yeah, you're absolutely right. The 1940s and 50s is when it really picked up. You did have the mass migration of Jewish people to this country. One of the ways that the Nazis used to check to see if the males in the household were Jewish, if they couldn't tell, was exactly by that. They would look to see if they were circumcised, and if you were screwed, you know. And so, pardon?
Oh, I said you were in big trouble, Jack.
Oh yeah. So, but you had that time. You had a lot of Jews escaping Nazi Germany. I think it started. This started before that, the 20s and 30s. But by the 40s and World War II, you also had U.S. service members being deployed on foreign soil in pretty dirty conditions. You now have Jewish medical advice going on, and this was something that was compulsorily done in the military. If you were a soldier being deployed and you were not circumcised, they did that for you in the military because they thought it was going to be cleaner. That's what. Hey, it's in the Bible. All these Jewish people are, they're doing it. There must be something to it, so let's just circumcise everybody in the military. And then now you have an entire generation of people born in the 40s and 50s who are circumcised. Well, it happened to me. So, of course, if it's better for me, it's going to be better for my kids. And it's the gift that keeps on giving that way,
We also have to look at the medical. The medical community as a whole, anyway, they kind of have their traditions in a sense. So if it's common medical practice that this is something that is healthy for kids, then unless there's a reason to go against that, they're not gonna change that opinion. And it's not been until in recent years when people have actually started looking. Wait a second, is this something that is really necessary? And there's starting to be studies that have been done, and you have a younger generation of doctors coming up. The medical community as a whole, and I'm talking about like family physicians and that type of thing, they tend to stay with traditional medical practices, and what is, what's the word I'm looking for?
New school medicine, or
it's precedents. They look at what is medical precedents, and that's what they hold on to. There needs to be something major that gets them to change their viewpoints. So from the 40s and 50s and 60s, you had Dr. Spock, how Dr. Spock, not in Star Trek, but the pediatrician who was very popular and talked about all those type of things. It's going to take a lot for those things to change in the medical community. And I think that
actually, Dr. Spock,
but it's really the medical influence as well.
Dr. Spock actually was one of the few dissenters, because I've actually looked up, he was against circumcision when everyone else was for it at the time. But the majority, you're right, the majority of pediatricians at that time and just general practitioners were for it. And, it was really popularized as kind of the standard in the 30s or 40s. But at the turn of the century, you had Harvey Kellogg, who was a doctor, who promoted circumcision as a cure for masturbation, which at the time was considered to be like this really horrible thing that needed to be cured because it caused epilepsy and blindness and all sorts of ridiculous things that we recognize as ridiculous today. Back then, they actually believed this stuff.
Hairy palms.
Yeah, there you go.
Hairy palms.
Hold on.
So you go into a church, a Southern Baptist church, and you're going to hear some of that stuff even today. So it's not old school.
Yes.
Yeah. So to cure the sin of masturbation, his idea, well, we'll just chop off their foreskin. If they don't have foreskin, they won't be able to masturbate anymore. So that worked, right? Clearly.
And then all the
until we got lotion.
Yeah.
And then all the circumcised guys said, "Oh, really? Oh, really?"
Who gets the last laugh now? Yeah.
Did you see all the meat getting thrown onto the floor?
Yeah. And speaking of him, speaking of Dr. Kellogg, he promoted circumcision in boys. He also recommended it for girls too. A lot of people don't know that part. That never caught on, thank God.
Thankfully.
But that was his
anyway.
recommendation.